All right, the dogs and Ty talk about the upcoming game. Dean Leggy, Ryan Curley, is always joining us for this edition of Riding Home. Ryan, everybody's sort of still catching their breath from the Orange Bowl. There's really a lot to talk about. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, let's just start with the guys we got to hear from today. Let's just
Okay.
dive into it.
All right, Nick,
Saban was
Kirby.
first.
Okay.
Start with Saban. He called Brock Bowers one of the premier players in college football. That's the thing that jumped out at me the most. The rest of it was pretty standard Saban, but that's really high praise from the greatest college football coach of all time, calling your freshman tight end one of the premier players in college football. And he's right. Brock
He
Bowers has
is.
been one of the premier players in college football. He made his impact early against Michigan in the Orange Bowl. The game plan kind of changed and they spread the ball around a little bit. And Kirby admitted that he's dealt with a shoulder injury all year. That hasn't slowed him down at all from what we've seen. Maybe that slowed him down in a different way, but he's right. One of the best players in college football, in my opinion.
Well, Nick, I mean, you can say stuff and try to motivate your team and it still be true. And I think that in this case, stopping Brock Bowers is going to be a real challenge. One other thing that was discussed, and we're just going to kind of go all over the place right now. One other thing, I can't remember who asked him, but Stetson was asked about there's no real one leader. Like you can't just you shut down Zamir or Brock or whoever. And that was I'm getting phone calls here from Kirby and company. Um, why don't you throw the ball to the tight end more? Um, the interesting thing about that discussion with Stetson was he was saying, "Hey, I basically try to get it to the playmaker. I don't predetermine where I'm going with the ball, even if it's a one-on-one situation. You try to get that matchup, of course, but that's a challenge for Alabama, and they lived up to the challenge this past time. Is covering all of the weapons that Georgia's got. That Georgia is not. I don't know if they're truly elite at any position, perhaps outside of tight end. Stuff like running back, those are really good players, but I don't know if they're special the way that Brock Bowers is, and it's got to be challenging to have to cover all 53 yards widthwise of the field. If you're Alabama, they did a pretty good job of it this last time. Now the question is, who will do a better job being themselves in this game? Alabama's win won them the league, Ryan, and it won them the opportunity to play in this game. Those are pretty meaningful things. But as soon as they step on that field, that game doesn't mean shit.
No, it's a totally new game, and that's what the coaches will tell you, that every game is exclusive from another, and obviously this is a situation where they can go back and look at the SEC championship tape because these teams already played each other, and they're going to do that to an extent. I don't know. I'm sure they've already done that a lot, but it's an exclusive game. It's a completely new game. And when you look at Alabama's team, they're missing two key players that they were not missing against Georgia, and their defensive back in McClellan, and then your number two weapon in John Mechie. So Georgia is going to have to prepare a little bit differently for that, and Alabama is going to have to prepare a little bit differently for that. Stetson Bennett even said, he made a joke in the press conference, got a smile out of me, but talking about how he doesn't think Alabama will email them their game plans this week. He's assuming that they won't. So they're just going to have to game plan the way that they always do. Stetson Bennett was typical Stetson Bennett today, a little bit snarky, but obviously well thought out, very smart person.
Yeah, he's very measured with what he says, and um, you know, um, Stetson's a very intelligent guy. It's not exclusive to him. There's a lot of really smart people on this team, and Kobe Dean comes to mind. But he is extremely measured with what he has to say. Kirby, I think Stetson, with what he said about basically Alabama's going to try to be Alabama, Georgia's going to try to be Georgia, and whoever executes the best is going to win. That's the way I see it. And the other team can affect you for sure. But if Georgia plays the way that they want to play, and that's the real challenge, they won't lose. They will win this game and they will bring home the national championship.
They have to play their game. The game that we
Yeah.
saw against Michigan is the way that Georgia played all year during the regular season, the way they shut down opponents. They It doesn't really matter how much Georgia scores in each game. We've seen it sporadic all over the place. They've scored in the 50s, they've scored in the 60s, the 40s, the 30s, the 20s. But shutting down the other team, controlling the ball game, that is not what they did against Alabama the first time around. Georgia's got to play that type of game if they want to beat Alabama. You don't want to get into a shootout against Bryce Young and Jamison Williams. That's You don't want to get into a shootout. The pass rush is going to have to get there. We talked this got really dragged out, but it's getting dragged back in because they're playing Alabama again. So all the storylines over the next week are going to be brought back up. But the pass rush has to get home more often than they did against them the first time around. I would imagine that the game plans adjusted a little bit. We saw them only rush 3 and 4 for the majority of the first half and third quarter. They were a little bit more successful when they brought more guys. That's the way that Auburn was successful against Alabama. I imagine that changes up a little bit for Kirby, Lanning, and company in this game. But who's going to play? Georgia's the better team. They are the better team. I think they're the better football team. They played their worst game of the year against Alabama, and Alabama played their best game of the year. That happened on the same day. Unfortunate for Georgia, fortunate for Alabama. That earned Alabama #1 in the college football playoff and the chance to play Cincinnati and win that game. But if you're Georgia, you need to play your game. You need to block out the noise, stay locked in. I think the team really is locked in. That was what I gathered from the press conferences after the Orange Bowl, was that they weren't satisfied with where they were. The most specific example I have that was Nakobe Dean. Not a single smile out of him. All business, all class, ready to go beat Alabama. You got to play your game. And if Georgia plays their game, and if Alabama plays their game, I still think Georgia's the better team.
Well, you sound a lot like me, which I'm sure that the listeners are glad that you're maturing into your development there. I like your yeah. No, well, you do sound like what I'm saying. It's easier said than done, right? That's the problem. Challenge is playing your game when the other guy is zooming away with 24 points in a quarter or whatever it was. That's going to be the challenge for the Dogs. Um, and you said the pass rush has to get home. It didn't get home at all against Alabama. So there's a couple of things that are there's a slew of things that are different here. I mean, number one, the whole thing is on the line for everybody in this game. It's not just the whole thing's on the line for Alabama. That narrative may be overplayed. Okay. Secondly, it's a different location, and most importantly, there are two players out for Alabama. One specifically, the receiver. Him being out, that hurts them. I mean, now some of the folks that I know in the coaching community say, well, those guys, they grow receivers on trees. It's no big deal for Alabama. Just roll another guy in there. All right, maybe, but it's going to be challenging to replace Minchie that quick. Excuse me. We're talking about, I don't know, a 3-week turnaround. That's not going to be easy. The other thing is, Alabama and Georgia, they both get the ability to adjust. How will they adjust? What are we going to be looking for from this Alabama from Georgia that they'll do differently? I mean, will they literally attack Bryce Young in a way that they're saying, hey, you're going to hit big balls, fine, we're going to attack you, and that's it for that. I mean, we're okay. You hit big balls last time without us really getting what. In other words, how could it get worse? You beat us by 17. You beating us by 30. So that we're going to see if Georgia can adjust. And Kirby Smart and them have adjusted very well, typically at halftimes. Now they've had a 4-week halftime. Or what is it? Has it been 5 weeks since that game?
It will be a month on Wednesday.
Yeah, so 4.5 weeks, we'll call it. That's a long time to study things and make adjustments. Kirby is extremely, I don't want to say exclusively analytical. He's certainly very cerebral. And his point that I think he's making that's correct, more correct than people realize, is that you don't want to overdo it sometimes with the corrections and the adjustments. Georgia could go in with the same game plan as the first time and win. They cannot go in with the same or a changed game plan with the same execution and win. The execution was really bad.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The the adjustments in the game plan that falls on the coaches, the execution of your new game plan that falls on the players. I think that makes a lot of sense, and that they could come in with a very similar game plan they did the first time around. And as long as they execute, that's a totally different ball game. Alabama's not putting up 40 points. Maybe Stetson Bennett doesn't make a couple of those throws. He kind of alluded to that today, how he can't make mistakes like that are costly.
No,
He
he
knows
can't.
that
He
he knows
cannot do
he
that.
knows he made those mistakes.
Yeah,
Those
but
mistakes didn't happen against Michigan.
they didn't. But Stetson's played these guys twice, and listen, I am not a Stetson critic, okay, but he cannot make those mistakes again. Now we've seen it multiple times. He can't. He's got to play in his zone. No Superman Stetson. Just be Stetson. That's it. And just do that. It's enough. But you can't overdo it. And he's tried to overdo it a couple times with Alabama. Just take the sack or throw the
I
ball out of
was
bounds. It's okay.
I was thinking about that on my drive to Athens today. Is that Stetson Bennett can't try to be the hero. He will be the hero if they win this game. He will be a forever hero in Athens, but you can't try to be the hero. You just have to go out there and play your game and play it well. I think Todd Monken's play calling is going to be super important. I thought he called an excellent game against Michigan. He was really in his bag. It's all connected, man. The entire team is connected. The defense is on a
Totally.
string. It all works together. But Stetson Bennett can't walk into this game and I don't think he's going to do this. I don't think this is what's going to happen. But he can't walk into the game thinking I'm going to be the hero today. No, he's just got to make the right plays and avoid as many mistakes as possible. A lot of the quarterback position is making smart plays and avoiding mistakes. And as Dean Leggett always tells me, a lot of life is avoiding bad shit.
Yeah. And I'm the one putting kind of words in Stetson's mouth there or in his brain. I don't know what Stetson's thinking, but I'm just saying that I know I've been around enough to know that he feels like he's a really good player, and he is. Um, but in athletics, often we try to do too much. And the truth is, it's okay for Jake Camarda to come out there, even if he shanks one off the side of his foot. It's okay to come out and let your defense play. And Stetson has grown a lot since the 2020 season. It's hard to believe we're in 2022. Stetson's grown a lot in the 2020 since the 2020 season. He part of it is the pressure that Alabama put on him or puts on him, not in his brain but physically. But I think if he plays a controlled, managed game, they win, and they might win by 10 or more. I mean, it's 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 right there, and I'm recognizing here that it's both. I mean, he's not. He's not given any indication, Ryan, that he's going to go try to save the dogs. His point is, I'm trying to get the ball to the playmakers. To which I
Yeah.
say, yes, that's awesome. The guys in front of you need to block as best they can. You can get out of it with your legs sometimes, but there's no one on this team. Let's quit talking about Stetson. No one on this team needs to be a hero. Kendrick doesn't have to undercut routes. Uh, N'Kobe very rarely makes mistakes, but N'Kobe doesn't need to do something he's not supposed to do. Jordan Davis, you got to fill your. Everybody's got to do their gap control. I mean, if you don't, you can have some real. No, there ain't no guessing against Alabama. You got to do what you're supposed to do and make them earn it. You make them earn it the entire way. That's a very different ball game. I expect a very different ball game personally. I do. I'm that dumb. So I expect this to be much more of a fight for Alabama to have to deal with. I don't. I think Georgia will win, but I recognize that either team can win this game. It's going to be a more challenging game than Michigan, I suspect. And but everybody has overdone the losing, and there are some real things that are different for Bama. They still have a great quarterback, the premier guy in college football. And their defense has played better. There's a reason why they're that the best coach in college football. There's a reason why they're there. But we saw in South Florida, man, why Georgia is so deadly right now.
That game was over in the first quarter. I know you don't like to say that a game is over too early, but there was no coming back from the way that Georgia was beating down on them in that first quarter, in that first half, and it could have been even deadlier. But you get the cameo, which I think is going to turn into a meme of sorts with Kirby screaming at Stetson right going into the half, it could have been another touchdown if they played that differently, or at least another field goal. It could have been in the 30s when Michigan
Yeah.
only had three. We saw in Miami how good Georgia is. It's what we saw all year. It's why we thought Georgia could potentially have a 15-0 season. That's not the case anymore.
No,
But you
no,
got one more game.
I never said that.
I I thought that it was possible.
I'm just saying that
I
I never
probably
said
said
that.
it at some point. Well, that props to you for not predicting the wrong thing then. But
No, no, I
I'm
mean
pretty
it's
sure I
really
said that at
easy.
some time.
It's pretty easy to predict that a team won't go 15-0.
Yeah, no,
I
I
have
thought it was very possible. Is really what I meant.
well, as it turns out, it was possible. I just have flashbacks to after, you know, the championship game for Clemson in '08, where everybody was convinced they were going to go 45-0. It's so stupid to say, and they said it, and I was just like, this is delusional, man. And of course, they did not go 45-0. They went whatever in three. So it's what it is. And this team, you know, as it turns out this season, no one in college football was so much better than anyone else that they could go through the thing. And and not to turn this into a Clemson thing, but when you play in a league like that, yeah, you're gonna have, I don't know, 7 of your 8 conference games are not going to be challenging at all. Well, Georgia didn't have. I mean, how many challenging conference games did Georgia have? Not a lot. Um,
The SEC championship.
yeah, but well, I mean in the first 8, and even Clemson didn't get
None of
challenged
them. None
there.
of them. Georgia was not extremely challenged in any regular season game other than Clemson.
Right, right. And would Clemson challenge them now? See, I don't think so. I
I
think
don't think so. I don't think that's
it
a
would be
close
very
game.
I think it would be very similar to the Michigan game. Um, I we've got a long way to go this week. There's we're not done talking about anything. It's hard to tell right now, with all this weather in the state and the way the kids are, now you don't want to lose power. I don't know if Georgia's lost power or not. They got generators. Um, but there's
I've
no
been out of
classes.
power today.
There's no class this week, and so they can totally zone in on everything right now. Um, this opportunity is amazing. Again, you don't want to play the game on Wednesday. So their massive practices will be Wednesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, I think, and then they'll get in the plane after practice on Friday and go. They'll have a quasi practice on um, Saturday up in Indianapolis. It is going to be extremely cold, um, but both these teams have earned this. I'm excited to see it. I'm also curious to see how many people watched the Georgia Michigan game. That will give us an idea on how large this audience will be for Alabama Georgia. But it's a big event. Have you been to anything close to this large in your life?
No,
Yeah.
no, it'll be the biggest sporting event I've ever been to.
And it will be the largest sporting event that Stetson, George, I meant Zamir, N'Kobe, all these guys, this will be the biggest game they've ever played in. The good news is they just played this game. The bad news is they got their ass whipped the last time. So the question is, how can they recover? How will they be? And are they ready for the challenge that is playing Alabama, the best team of the best program of our time for sure, and perhaps the greatest dynasty in college football history? That's the question, Ryan. And it's challenging.
They had their chance in 18. They came up just short. They have another chance now to take them down, and I think what could really spring a potential dynasty of their own.
No, we're going to go
What's
there.
possibly in front of them. I've already said this. This is not new from me because I think I made a video about this. This game could really change a lot for Georgia. I'm not saying that there's going to be a dynasty, but the way that Kirby Smart's built the last 6 years, winning a national championship would really take it to the next level. You should start to expect championships the way that Alabama does. That's what's going to happen, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what's the next 10 years of college football is going to be really fun with Kirby Smart and Nick Saban and all the other great coaches. I think that we have an amazing game coming up between two juggernauts, and I think that we have a great decade of college football ahead of us too.
Well, Nick is not going to be coaching at 80. I think he'll coach at 75, but 10 years from now, I don't expect, Nick to be coaching. I do expect Kirby to be coaching. Now we'll just see, but it is going to be a fun time. And, looking back on it, back to Michigan, there was a time in the Bo Schembechler, Woody Hayes, there was a 10-year war, and we should not, I don't, the term war is for warriors, people who actually fight and risk their life. But in colloquial terms, it was a 10-year war. And we don't know how far are in on this big fight between Georgia and Alabama. They really have just started it. It started in 2017, and things change. If you don't think so, go check on Tennessee and Miami right now. And I mean, I don't mean that bad, but things do change, and things can change. Things can always get worse, but we don't know where we're at in this perhaps decade-long fight between Alabama and Georgia. There will always be people and Georgia's got to make it a fight too, by the way. But there will
They
always
have to
be.
win. They have to start winning
They have
games.
to start winning. Yeah, it's not that hard. It's not rocket surgery, okay?
Yeah.
It's probably rocket science though. And like there will always be I don't know if interlopers is the best term, but there will always be Ohio State that comes in and flashes around, or Oklahoma, but it's really been Georgia, Bama, and Ohio State. They have been the three that have been the best three in terms of recruiting over the last 5 years. I expect those three to continue. And I expect you to go over to dogpost.com and listen to more about this riveting conversation. Dean Legge and Ryan Curley. We'll see you over on the website. Thanks for watching.